he started making this game, this prototype. It was just for fun. And very often he would ask some of the friends from the industry to help out a bit. Sometimes it would be, someone dropping by with a beer and helping with some problem,
Cool. Hey, this is Sarah.
Hey, this is Eve.
And we are Open Indie, a podcast talking about and with indie developers all across Europe. We discover their stories and talk about indie games, meaning games that aren't AAA like Call of Duty or Far Cry. Indie games are rather small, but often very creative and really something special.
In today's episode, we're going to Poland, the country where AAA titles like Cyberpunk and The Witcher come from. But Poland is also home to many indie studios creating games like our today's guest, Rock Square Thunder.
This is a relatively new studio currently developing the puzzle platformer named the Lightbringer.
We talked to Janusz Tarczykowski, who explained to us what the game is about and if the Polish government is supporting their development studio.
We start off with 2 questions, which are always the same. Everybody on our show is getting these, so it's sort of a warm-up. And question 1 is, what was the first game you've ever played?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge.
It was definitely on Pegasus, which was a ripoff of NES, and could have been actually Mario. Super Mario Bros. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
So you can see the influence in the Lightbringer,
Ah, yeah, there is some, yeah. I can see that. And what was the last game you've played through completely, like from start to finish?
I have to admit that I rarely finish games, because I just play so many games, and usually I get into a next game before I finish the last one, and sometimes they are pretty long.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have been Dark Souls 3, actually.
Ooh.
It's not such a new game, but those games I always finish, the Dark Souls series.
Yes, they're my favorite, to be honest.
Oh, great, yeah. Mine as well.
Yeah, every time I see something of Dark Souls on YouTube, I immediately want to play this game again. It's so fascinating. I don't know, I could play it all over again. Normally, I don't play games like twice. Like if I finish them once, then that's fine with me. With Dark Souls, I could just start immediately and finish the whole game again.
Yeah, I understand. Like for me, Dark Souls and Total War series are just games that I can spend countless hours on.
Yeah, they're really fascinating. Yeah, true. But your game, The Lightbringer, which you are developing at the moment, I don't know. I don't think there are similarities with Dark Souls, are there?
Well, no, there aren't. Although at some points we did try to make our combat a bit Dark Souls-y.
Okay.
Back when actually we had at the beginning we didn't have the boomerang that we have right now as your weapon, but we actually had a sword and a crossbow. So then we had one try when we said, okay, let's make this combat tactical, a bit like Dark Souls, But sadly, we failed at making it really good. So we're like, okay, scrap that, next approach. And I think we've iterated like 4 different approaches to combat before we said, okay, this is the one,
Yeah, I see. So the Lightbringer, the game you're currently developing, is like a puzzle platformer and adventure game, and it has no release date yet, right?
Yes, exactly.
But still, you have a goal when you want to release it?
Yeah, definitely this year. I hope I can say that, before, because we already have like in our minds, we have a inside release date that we are aiming for. But we are not, saying anything yet because we don't want to then be like, oh, we didn't make it on time. We have to move it. We just want to be sure that we'll make it on time.
Sure. The Lightbringer, what is it about?
Yeah, so like our story is like very poetic. So it's written in verse.
To restore harmony, one needs a tool. Ancient, powerful, created to rule. imbue with power and lore of the light, will bestow upon you the ancient might.
We have like strong metaphors about global warming and human greed kind of destroying the environment. So you're playing, as a boy. So the world before the start of the game, there used to be a whole civilization, thriving world, and people were just extracting so many resources from the world, from the land, that at a certain point, the slime, what you call the slime, or the corruption, came from underground, and so it started taking over the cities, taking over the world, and humanity has like one last bastion, one last city where they live. And your task as the Lightbringer is to actually defeat this corruption and bring the light back. So it's very about the balance, the light and the darkness, about not being too greedy as a species, and showing that if we continue on the path that we might be as humanity right now, there might be consequences. But it's not like directly, we're not saying any of this stuff. It's more like hidden in the metaphors.
Yeah. And you also said there's this in-game voice, like the character himself, he doesn't speak, but you're hearing this voice from your sister.
Yes, exactly.
And she speaks in verse. And why did you choose to do that? Like, why did you want to tell the story this way?
Yeah, so we always had this idea that we are not like super special one, magical being that has to be the one, right? Mm-hmm. That someone before us tried the same. So we are just another brave soul to try, We're not like, what we do is not because we are special, but because we have courage to do so. So we had this idea for someone who did it before us, and we wanted to be someone close to the character. So we chose to have a sister, and to have the sister not being someone you have to rescue, mm-hmm. Not doing the same trope again, but someone who actually was a courageous and capable fighter as well, and who tried to do what you are attempting now. So it also raises the stakes because your bigger sister failed, which means that it has to be really dangerous, has to be really tough to complete your mission, right? And as for the for the verse, it was actually it's a funny story, because at first it was not written in verse, it was written in prose, but then we were joined by a really talented narrative designer who was entrusted with improving our storytelling. And he was like, he just written his ideas in verse, and we're like, wow, this is it, this is just amazing. I wouldn't be able to write the story in verse, but Christian, our narrative designer, he is just amazing. He just did something incredible.
I think it adds also a mysterious vibe to the game.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's the best part of indie game development. You have talented people who meet, who join forces, and they can do so many things, so many interesting things.
So you can be more creative or something?
Yeah, exactly. You have more space to do different stuff than when you're working in AAA or bigger companies,
Yeah, so you can try out more,
yeah, exactly,
and stuff like that. And the gameplay of the Lightbringer, it's something like an old school platformer, I would say.
Yeah, there were a lot of inspirations that, when we started. Of course, the obvious ones are like games like, Mario series.
The first game you've ever played.
Yeah, exactly, But we never had like one game that we are based on, So there was never like, okay, we are making a clone of Mario or something. A lot of games I played as children, they came together in kind of a soup of inspirations. So there's a platformer, there's strong puzzle elements, and there's combat as well, combat like in adventure games. So
yeah,
and of course there's narrative. There's a story very prominent. But I think the core is platforming, very old school platforming. So it definitely reminds of older Mario games or like Crash Bandicoot games.
Yeah.
From our three like co-founders, we are all big Nintendo fans, you know. Lucas and Arthur, my other, you know, co-founders, they are even bigger Nintendo freaks than me, you know. So it definitely shows in, you know, in what we just have in our hearts when we design games, you know.
How did you come up with the game?
It all started with our 3D artist, Lucas, you know, one of the co-founders. He started making this game as just a way to learn programming and other kind of, because he used to work as a 3D artist, but he was a bit tired of doing only assets for the games. He wanted to like be more than just a asset guy, you know. So he wanted to learn, you know, programming and different sides of making the games. So he started learning in Unity, in Playmaker, doing prototypes of you know, of the game. And at first it was very different, of course, than what it is now. And he's been making this prototype for a long time, like after hours, you know. It wasn't like he hadn't had like a plan to release it soon or something like this, you know. It was just for fun. And very often he would be like, ask some of the friends from the industry to help out a bit. For example, you know, to help him with level design, to help him with some scripts, you know. Mm-hmm. So the game would grow. Sometimes it would be, you know, someone dropping by with a beer and helping with some problem, you know.
Cool.
Yeah, so it continued like this for a few years. And at a certain time he was like, you know what, I want to actually finish this project. I want to make a demo and, you know, release it in some way. So his first idea was actually to make it as a mobile game.
Okay.
And so he, together with, you know, Arthur, our other co-founder, level designer, and one programmer who wasn't me back then, but it was like our friend David Bujak from Flying Wild Hog. They started making this prototype, you know, and they, you know, after some time, they actually had like, I think there was like a 3 or so levels finished.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, you know, this is now more or less finished. We can try releasing it somehow. But at the same time, they kind of haven't, you know, had idea about how to do it, you know, how to release the game, how to find maybe someone who wants to take it over or like, you know, be a publisher or something like this. So it was on the freezer for some time. It was finished, but nothing was happening with it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, one other friend from the industry was like, oh, you know, I've played your game and it's so fun, you know, you should pitch it to the publishers, you know. And he actually had a Switch dev kit and he prepared a Switch build. And he was like, you know, this game runs perfectly on Switch, you know, and it's a perfect console for that, you know, you should make this game for Switch.
Yeah.
And he actually like showed it to one of the publishers in Krakow who became interested, you know, and the publisher was like, yeah, this game looks interesting, you know, maybe we would want to release it, to publish it. And since I was close with those guys and I had experience working with publishers, doing a bit of more like a business side, because I used to, you know, working for a bigger companies, but I used to do this kind of stuff. So they asked me like, okay, you know, would you like to come with us? Because we are, you know, we don't know how to do this sort of negotiations, talks, etc. So we came like 3 of us. We went to the meeting with this publisher and they were like interested. So we were like, wow, yeah, let's start a company. Let's make a game. And I quit my current job back then, which I already wanted to do. I was already planning to move from Krakow to the seaside. And I was like, yeah, so let's do it. But then those talks kind of were taking a long time, you know.
Okay.
So the publisher was interested, but it was taking a lot of time before they sent any contract. And I'm like a proactive guy, you know. I never like to wait.
Yeah, I hate that as well. Yeah.
So I was like, you know what we should do? We should try pitching this game to other publishers as well. So I made a pitch and I've joined some events and I started pitching it to other publishers, talking with other publishers. And of course it took a few months before we actually had anything. But before that first Polish publisher finished their kind of process, we already found Zordix and we already were in talks with them and very close to signing a deal with them. And actually, I enjoyed, I would say, I felt that they were much more professional, and I felt that they were a better match.
So you ditched your first publisher.
Yeah, kind of, it was, if they actually moved faster and they really wanted, to sign this game and made, faster moves, then probably it would be a very different story, right? But
yeah.
But
sure. But if they don't get a move on, then yeah, I totally understand. So you only started the company when you had, when you talked to the publisher. You didn't have a company before that.
No, and I wouldn't recommend for any indie team to start a company before they actually have to, because there's no point.
Okay.
So I would say, first get a deal, and when you are close to getting a deal, and you are required, because when you're actually signing the deal, then you should have a company already. You should be incorporated. But before that, don't do it. Just be few guys or girls.
But for you, it worked.
Yeah, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, cool. And well, you said your friend, he started developing the game. When did he start? So what's the time range?
I think it was the first time I've seen this project was 2015.
Okay.
So almost 6 years ago, Back then, of course, it was just him playing around with how to make any game. It was a very, very different game. Even the demo that we showed to the publishers that got us a deal, was a very different game.
How was it different?
The visual style was very different. It was much simpler because the idea from Lucas was to release it on mobile, right? So it had to be simpler.
Yeah.
It was definitely a simpler game, smaller. The biggest difference was that the levels were very tiny. They were like dioramas. And it was something that we actually wanted at first to do. But some things just happen organically when you're making a game, You're starting testing the levels, testing the ideas, and you see, okay, this works better than that stuff. And of course, with the visual style, when you have more time, when you have a year or so or more to release a game, the visual style keeps improving, for the first year, Usually when you're making a game, you have few stages. So you have pre-production where you're basically iterating on the gameplay, on the visual style, on everything. And only after you are really okay, we have a piece of the game, which is great, which we love. Then you're moving to production, right? Full production. So then you're just finishing new content usually. But of course, since we are kind of free creative guys, we were free. No, we are 10, but we are creative guys who love making games. Even when we already shouldn't have probably changed things, we're okay, I have this is very tough, I have this amazing idea that will improve the game. Should we try it, or should we just focus on what we were doing? It's a very tough balance to strike.
So you always have to keep the balance of just focus on the things you already have and putting in new stuff, right?
Yeah. But sometimes you have something that improves the game so much that you are okay, maybe we should spend extra month doing this. So it's of course a very tough question. You have to very think about, what are your schedules, what is your production timeline, budget, and everything. And you have to make this decision, the decision might be different for each case.
And how would you say is the development going so far?
Yeah, I think it's going very well,
Okay.
Especially that now that we have grown to 10 people and our team is amazing, I'm just so shocked that we've managed to find such cool and creative people for the team.
Cool.
So what we had at the beginning of the year, after a year of production, just 3 of us, and what we have now is just, the difference is amazing. And we are slowly finishing, we are in the stage where we are not making too many new things, many features for the game. We're mostly finishing content, improving the feel of the game, etc. So we are slowly coming towards the end. And we're making one final boss fight that is going to be amazing, I hope. Because, it's much more ambitious than the previous ones,
Okay, cool. What would you say didn't work quite as well during the development phase?
Yeah, the first thing that didn't work so well was actually the dioramas, right? The original concept for the game was each level was a diorama, but somehow organically each level got bigger and bigger, and right now some of the levels are like mini open worlds, you know. So maybe keeping the size of the game in check sometimes failed.
Yeah.
We also discovered that the combat is really, really hard to make. So, like I said, we have spent a lot of time iterating different combat approaches, you know.
What is so difficult about combat?
It's very important to get a feel right. And at the same time, to get, for example, melee combat, which is fun, you have to have a lot of animations. And we were, 3 guys, and none of us was an animator. Mm-hmm. So our 3D artist could do some simple animations, but to actually make this combat fun, we just realized, okay, we created these enemies, but they are too complex to do all the animations for the combat, to do the AI for this combat. So to make a game within our means, when we were just free, it was very, very tough. It was very tough to make a combat that we knew we can make in time.
Okay.
That will be fun. And we are perfectionists. So we don't settle for, okay, this is like, okay, so let's leave it. We were like, no, has to be great,
But that's good. That's important.
It's good for the game probably, but at the same time, it's not that good for making it on time, if you know what I mean. Like sometimes it's probably a better idea to maybe do something that is maybe not perfect, but at least it's on time. So that was also one of the struggles that we have, like, okay, this is okay. Should we leave it like this, or should we iterate even more, spend more time on it?
Okay. So, I don't know, like I would say, well, can you take more time, or do you definitely want to finish this game this year?
Yeah, I think we want to finish the game this year.
Okay.
Like I said, right now we are in this phase where we are not making big changes.
Okay.
And of course, for any game, you can take additional year and polish everything, to hell. But pretty much there is never, like with art, it's never finished. We can only say, okay, let's finish this game, right?
Mm. Yeah, I understand. Sometimes you just need to say, okay, it's done. Just get it out of there.
Exactly.
I saw on Steam that you're also writing a dev diary about the process of developing a game. And I had the feeling there's a lot you have to keep in mind, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have worked in the industry for some time, sometimes on smaller teams, sometimes on teams as big as, over 100.
Yeah.
And I have even worked, in the company that does outsourcing for AAA studios, working on AAA games. So I've seen very different approaches to the production, different approaches to how you make the games, So my dev diary is mostly about, the agile development, because the IT industry has already adopted the agile very widely. But in the games industry, very often we are still working in the old school waterfall ways, when you try to plan the whole production at the beginning, and then you think, okay, we have this amazing plan. Now let's just do everything according to this plan, But you cannot really plan 3 years of development, It's impossible.
Okay.
And with the agile mindset, you are more like, okay, you of course have some goals for what you want to make, but you have much like shorter iteration times, you know that things will not go perfectly according to the plan, so you have to constantly improve, but you also have to constantly have a actual product.
Yeah.
The mistake that some developers make is to okay, we are making something, you can't see it yet, but in 2 years it will all come together perfectly, And with agile, you're more like, okay, you have to get to the minimum viable product as soon as possible, and then iterate on that, add on that, You cannot hope that it will just magically come together at the last moment of the development.
So, would you say that there are still many people in the gaming industry who only work according to this plan and don't want to change anything?
Yeah, I think a bit. There are very often the problem is that there is like one person who thinks that they know perfectly what's good for the game, right?
Okay.
And I have this vision, we have to make it. And then, the team spends a year working on that, but then the vision changes and it was like, oh, I have a new idea for the story. Let's just scrap everything and remake it from the beginning, right?
Okay.
And of course, maybe sometimes it works, maybe, especially when you're someone like Hideo Kojima, right?
Yeah.
Or someone like an amazing developer that you are right. But at the same time, it's very hard to trust this. And very often the team also doesn't know what they are doing, Very important idea in the agile mindset is that you're giving more ownership to the team.
Ah, okay.
So you're making like a smaller teams inside the team, and you're trying to make the team like feel like they're actually making this game, that they are a big part of the development, and not just a cog in the machine making a vision of one guy somewhere on the top.
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah, but that's much better because the guy who's at the top might not really know the game or the actual steps of it or something. It's better to leave it to the creators to create it.
Yeah. At the same time, of course, it's very tough. It's very hard to, especially for the bigger teams. When you have a team of like 300 people or 500 people. Of course, they're making it in an agile way and giving more ownership to the team is actually very hard. So of course I'm not saying like, okay, this is just so easy, let's just do it this way.
Yeah, it
takes a lot of knowledge, it takes a lot of figuring out as well, what is the perfect process for the specific company.
Okay.
So it's a very tough challenge that smarter people than me have been figuring out for a long time. But yeah, I think like for me, one of the biggest inspirations for what I do with the Agile is Agile Game Development by Clinton Keith. I can recommend it to anyone. Like Clinton Keith has a lot of experience making big games, smaller games in, using Agile. It's actually, real world experience making great games. And
okay.
He's describing what I'm trying to describe in my my way.
So would you also say that a mixture is the best way? Like, of course, a bit of planning, but also giving the team some freedom?
Yeah, definitely. You can't not plan anything. You also can't plan everything. So definitely a balance is needed.
You already said that before you started your company, Rock Square Thunder, that you were already working a few years in the gaming industry for other companies. When did you start?
I have started in 2014, fresh out of university.
What did you study?
I have studied computer science. Mm-hmm. So it was always my dream to make games. So like last month of my uni, I just find a website where they, it was specifically for game development jobs. And I have sent one CV and I was like, no, I'm probably not gonna, get a job there, right? And to my surprise, I got the job. I got the job in Bluebird team.
Wow.
In Kraków. So I moved to Kraków and I started my, industry experience,
Cool. What did you do there?
Yeah, I've worked as an AI programmer and gameplay programmer as well.
Cool. What games did you work on?
I've worked, for example, on games like Brawl, Layers of Fear, The Observer.
Wow.
And it's where I've met Łukasz and Artur, like the co-founders, We have all met in Bluebird team in 2014.
Then you guys known each other a long time. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So even after I left Bluebird, I've kept contact with them because they have worked there until we launched Rock Square Thunder.
Perfect. And why did you change jobs?
Yeah, it was a lot of things. I was a bit frustrated by some things in Bluebird.
Okay.
I also wanted to try. I've moved to Norway, to Oslo, to work on an interesting project. So there was a lot of kind of things going on.
Okay. Then together with your colleagues, you founded Rock Square Thunder. Who came up with the name?
Yeah, that's always the question, It was actually a long process. We were like, how do we call the company? And we thrown the ideas around. So it was one of the dozens of ideas. But yeah, so general concept was to, find something that gets this idea of three creative forces coming together to make something unique, So why there are three components to Rock Square Thunder, right? And there's also a bit of a play on words on rock, paper, scissors,
Yeah, I thought so, yeah. So you are the CEO of Rock Square Thunder. What are your tasks exactly at the moment? Are you also writing code or only writing emails?
Yeah, for the first year, when there were three of us, I was writing all the code for the game.
Okay.
And also, running the business. So, making sure we all have salaries on our accounts each month, making sure talking with the publishers, talking with, possible investors, with, accountant company who was running our account. So pretty much doing all those tiny jobs as well, apart from writing code.
Okay.
But these days, after we have grown to 10, I definitely spend more time on managing the team than writing code. So I rarely write code directly, but I very often work with the team to, help them out and guide them.
Yeah, it's also important, sure.
And definitely there's more business side as well, because the reason we have grown is because we have managed to secure an investor in our company.
Yeah.
So of course it comes with some extra work as well,
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of support, you already said that you have this publisher who's supporting you. Is it a Swedish publisher actually?
Yeah, the publisher is Zordix Publishing. They are from Sweden, and I'm really grateful for them to believing in our game. So I have to give a shout out to Axel Danielsson, head of the publishing. Because he believed in our game, And
cool.
It was an amazing feeling to, have a publisher from abroad, because it's different when you have a publisher in Krakow, the same city, doesn't sound so fancy, right? But when you have a international publisher believing in your product, in your project, that's an amazing feeling.
Sure. Is it more difficult because they're abroad?
Doesn't matter. It doesn't affect our contacts in any way, especially that shortly after we started the company, the whole world went into lockdown, right?
Yeah.
And into working online. So it doesn't really matter if you're in Krakow or in Malmo, right?
Yeah, that's true. How are they supporting you? Are they a big help?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, the first part was they believed in us, which also gave us confidence that maybe this project can actually make some money and not just be our pet project that we release and forget about. And because the big plan was always to make a game, release it, and survive.
Yeah.
Of course, the very important support was financial support, because they have financed all the development. We haven't had any resources at the beginning on our end. So
nothing.
Without nothing, yeah. So we, and of course they are supporting us with, PR, with the marketing, with contacts. They got us, dev kits, right? They, they keep contact with platforms, they talked with Nintendo and got us featured on the Nintendo channel, for our announcement trailer. So
wow, yeah.
So there's a lot that publisher does that you wouldn't be able to, or would take a lot of time. So especially when you're a small team, I wouldn't recommend trying to do it on your own when you're a small indie team.
Okay, so always look for a publisher.
Yeah, that would be my kind of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's a first test. If you cannot find a publisher for your project, then maybe you either have to improve your project or maybe you have to try a different idea, right?
Oh, okay.
Of course, it's not 100% of the time, but if the publishers are like, okay, I would like to publish your game, then this is the first indication that your project actually makes sense financially as well.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, first you also said that you also contacted other publishers at first because the first one didn't respond. But if none of them would have contacted you again, then you would have changed your project somehow.
Yeah, it's possible. Like probably would either change the project or try release it in some way, like maybe actually release it on the mobile, as some sort of free-to-play or something, just to show it off, in that form.
Yeah.
But currently, right now, as already a company, because it's different when you are just few guys who try different things in their basement, right? Mm-hmm. And it's different when you're already running a business and people depend on on this business surviving, right?
Sure.
So I would definitely, if I make a prototype of the game and I pitch it to the publishers, and everyone was like, no, I don't think this project is for us, then I would probably try with a different idea.
We also talked to some developers who, well, they were all happy with the publishers, but they said it's always a risk that the publisher wants to take over the project and influence it in some way that the creators don't actually want, that they've got different ideas. How's it now with your publisher? Do they leave you to your project? Can you be still creative?
Yeah, like the Zordics haven't, like, there was not a single time when they were said like, okay, guys, we want you to change this or that,
Okay.
They were always giving us a lot of freedom to do what we want, Mm-hmm. Of course, it's important that we hit the milestones, like we, let's say if we agree that we want to make 5 levels for the next milestone, then it would be nice to actually hit those milestones, right?
Okay.
Because,
yep.
But they haven't interfered with our creative freedom at all, They're always very supportive, Of course, they gave us some feedback, and we always take this feedback into account. But there was never any time that they said like, okay, you have to change this because we don't like it.
Okay, yeah. But there are publishers out there who do that, right?
Probably, yeah, probably. Sometimes there are publishers who are very in the development. It can be good and it can be bad, because sometimes it's actually good when the publisher gives you some, like, I would say maybe they're trying to help you improve your game, Mm-hmm. But sometimes, of course, it can be bad and it can be, So I'm very happy with, with how we worked with Zordics and how we cooperated. Of course, it's important to talk with your publisher before you sign the deal to like, okay, how do you work with your games, Do you interfere a lot? It's very important to find a match, because it's easy to look at and say like, okay, this publisher is evil because they interfere or something like this, But have you actually asked them how they work, That's also important, It's important it's with like with dating, right? Not every cool person is perfect for you as your partner, right? So same with publishers, There can be cool publishers who will work out great for this company, but very badly for other company. So it's important for both sides to get their kind of expectations heard.
Okay. Sure, you've got to talk to them. Like, everybody's got their expectations, and you need to be on the same level.
Exactly.
Poland is known for its great support for the gaming industry. Is it really that great?
Well, as an indie team, we haven't had any support from our government. Maybe the only support I could say was from the indie games, like Polish Indie Games Foundation, because they got us into the GDC last year.
Ah, okay.
Which haven't happened because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
But actually, I had a ticket to go to US last year and to go to GDC, which was very cool. But apart from this foundation, we haven't had any support from the government. I think that there is a lot of like programs, and we even applied for one, but they're mostly taken by the bigger companies, because to get into those programs, there's a lot of bureaucracy. You have to write like a lot of documents, a lot of like very complex plans. Like it's very hard to write it properly and to convince those juries that your game should get this funding, right? For example. So like companies that are like, AA companies that have like, over 100 people, they very often hire specialists just for creating those programs for them, like for helping them getting those programs.
Crazy.
So
okay.
usually it's the same companies getting the funding each year, and it's very hard to get this as an indie team of 3 people,
So there's no focus yet in Poland for indie companies.
Yeah, definitely. Like the hard part is that, indie is a word that is sometimes associated with teams of 3 guys working from the basement and teams of 100 people making, AA games, right? So definitely it's not easy to get this help as a small team.
But at least there's this funding company who got you to the States. But the GDC, it's still there's still an online event happening, or happened last year, right?
I think last year nothing happened, at least at the beginning. Maybe something on the, but there's a lot of events happening online that you can be a part of to like pitch your game to the publishers. I would definitely recommend trying this as an indie team. And that's how we got in contact with Zordix. That's how Axel found us, was through an online event.
Okay. So are you getting enough support at the moment? Are you happy?
Yeah, like I said, we not from the government, right? But we have support from our publisher, and we have also found our like an investor who supports us as well. So that's why we are happy. We are doing well, and I feel like blessed. I think we are really lucky because we launched our company just before all the craziness happened, and it was actually easy for us to work from home. We haven't had any problems. There was like just 3 of us at that time, so we could just work from home, and there was no problem. So I feel really, really lucky.
Yeah, sure. Cool. So you're safe there. So you're right in the middle now, still developing the Lightbringer. But did you already set some goals? Like how many sold copies of the Lightbringer would make you happy?
Yeah, of course. We had those goals from the beginning, right?
Okay.
So like I mentioned, for us, our measure of success was if we make a game and we have money to make another game, then we are perfectly happy, right?
Okay, yeah.
So the goal that we had, like our inside goal, was like, it's not very big. If we sell like 40,000 copies, then I'll be happy, That would be like, we're good. If we sell 100,000, we'll be like, wow, we are so successful, it's amazing. So we are kind of modest. We are not, aiming to sell 1 million copies of our game, We are kind of realists. But we have also always planned that if we don't sold a single copy, we will still survive. And that was what we always dreamed of, and what like working with for the publisher and now investor gave us, that we are already safe even if we don't sell anything.
Okay, that's really good. Yeah, that puts some pressure off.
Yeah, definitely.
So you don't have any pressure. Yeah, that's perfect. I know you still, like, your mind is probably totally into the Lightbringer at the moment, of course. But are you already having some ideas for the next project?
Oh, of course, so many.
Yeah.
This is. Yeah, we are. Like I mentioned, we love making games. Mm-hmm. So we constantly have new ideas, for both for the Lightbringer but also for new projects. So we actually even had one prototype already last year, made of a boomer shooter, which was like very inspired by old school FPS games,
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, so it's like, very popular now with, old school fan of games like Doom. So you have like very fast paced FPS games. But since then, we have already had a lot of different ideas, and so we have ideas like from Lightbringer 2 or like, a bigger new open world game to like FPS or tactical games. We have a lot of ideas in our mind, so that's definitely not a problem. But of course, first we have to finish the Lightbringer.
Sure, but that's not a problem. It's always good to have some new ideas and just write them all down and then get to it after it.
Yeah, we have a Google Drive where we have like 20 different designs already, just waiting for us to have time for them,
Very cool. So this, what was it called? This boomer shooter?
Yeah, boomer shooter is like the name of the kind of a new, I would say maybe new, like a genre popping up.
Ah, okay.
That's heavily inspired by games like Doom, Duke Nukem, etc. So it's like a bit of a modern take on old school FPS games. So you had games like Prodeus, which came out recently.
And you said there's like a prototype already going around?
Yeah, we made a prototype. It wasn't like that great, so we have shelved it for now. We feel we have to improve it.
So you can't play it anywhere now.
No. But for you, Sarah, I will maybe I will dig it up for you.
Oh, that would be nice. That would be really nice. Take a peek. The cool thing is you already said a few. You already had a few advice for indie developers who want to start a business in Poland. So you said don't create a company before you don't have a publisher, right?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. And do you have any other do's and don'ts?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to show off your work. So either be a part of community and go on Reddit, go on Twitter and share your work, or even build a community around what you do. Try posting stuff on YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, because it will give you a lot of support. You might think, oh no, what I made is bad, it's ugly, it's something. But you will be surprised how much support you will get from other developers similar to yourself,
Okay, nice. So that's like a community of developers, kind of.
Yeah, and it gives you a lot of exposure. Like after we have started, posting stuff about Lightbringer, posting gameplays, we have started, getting emails from the publishers who are like, oh, do you already have a publisher for this game?
Ah, really?
So it also
okay.
So it might be interesting.
But there you already had the publisher, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were looking, but it showed us, okay, it's a great idea to post stuff online,
Yeah, sure. To get some feedback and to see if people like what they see and to start the hype, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So that would be my first advice for indie. Also, like go to game jams. Take part in game jams. Make games. That's the most important.
Yeah, one developer we had here on the show, like the German developer, he also said game jams are the most fascinating thing, and you got to do them definitely. And you're saying the same.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great idea as well. And just keep making stuff, and also start small. So try making a very small game that you can finish in a week at the beginning, then make 10 of them and you will see that you will improve very quickly,
Ah, okay. First, you got to practice.
Exactly.
Okay. And then get a publisher and start a business.
Exactly, yeah.
With the amount of tips Janusz gave to us, we could develop our own indie game now.
Definitely. But I would probably play games all the time instead of developing them.
Yeah, I think so too. That's why we're really excited to play the final version of the Lightbringer, which will come out sometime this year.
Yeah. Our release for the next episode of Open Indie is also coming up, also definitely sometime this year.
And a small heads up to all of you who already visited our website and heard a previous podcast of ours or started listening to it. They are only available in German, but we're working on an English translation right now, so stay tuned for that as well.
These are coming up.
Yeah.
See you then.